Okay, so in outer space, light travels at 300,000 kilometers per second. If you were to take 300,000 kilometers per second, figure out how many seconds are in a year, and then times that by 365, chances are you might get a number that's very close to 5.88 trillion miles, converting that over. So if you were to take, which is approximately 1 light year, 5.88 trillion, or 5,880 billion miles. Keep in mind, 1 mile is 5,280 feet, if you're familiar with that. And so, if we were to take that distance of 5.88 trillion miles, or just 1 light year is what we'll call it, and we were to say that represents 1 year in space, somehow. If we were to take, the distance light travels. Now, according to science, you might be familiar with the universe being 13.8 billion years old, well, the observable universe, like what we've seen, but there's obviously a lot more out there. There could even be other, sorry if that offends anybody by swearing, but anyways, there could be other things out there, like, that the universe has yet to even uncover, like, for example, maybe other universes that are beyond this universe, and maybe there's even more, like, things that are outside the universe that, like for example, you have an infinite amount of objects inside of another object. So, like, for example, you have, like, infinite dimensions, infinite parallel universes, you have an infinite number of objects inside of one another, if that makes sense. So, like, for example, it's like putting a box in another box and another box. So, like, for example, because the universe itself is infinite, there really is no way to really accurately measure, like, where you would draw the line that maybe the fourth dimension, where you would say the fourth dimension begins, if you're familiar with that. But my point is, if we really honestly wanted to measure, like, the observable universe, even though it falls under the category of a misconception, but at the same time there's a little bit of evidence to back it up that at least on record from what we've seen, that the universe is said to be at least 180 billion years old. At least that's what I've seen. But if we essentially want to, just for an example though, because that's really all this can be, because there's really no definitive way of proving, like, how big the universe is. I mean, as of right now, unless of course we were able to accurately measure it, but it gets bigger and bigger every second. But just to kind of give you an idea though, it's really more of a speculation. But if you were to take 1 light year and times it by how old the universe is, light years, so essentially 1 light year is 5.88 trillion miles, like I said earlier. If you were to take that number and times it by, like, however old you wanted to say the universe was at a certain point in time, you would actually get, in diameter, how big the universe is in the time. I'm not sure if you would want to multiply that by another 2, or because I'm like, like, for example, if somebody said that the universe was like 180 billion miles or 100 billion light years in, like, diameter, would they be referring to it just going, I mean, obviously it's going in all ways possible, but are they referring to it being 180 with the diameter with the other side included, or is that without adding, one side is 180 miles, or 180 billion diameter, and then so essentially you have 360 billion. But I think it was, like the radius. So, like, radius is having that diameter, so you have like 90 billion light years going one way, and the other is going another 90 billion. So times that by 2, and you got 180. But people say that that's a miscalculation, though. However, though, I honestly think it's sort of true, because, I mean, they did say that they did find a galaxy, and galaxies do move. At one point in time, it was 15% farther away, or at least that's how the speculation of it went. So, obviously, as of right now, that's probably the biggest example that we have that the universe is bigger than. But essentially, just to make a long story short, if you wanted to take that the universe was how big it was at a certain time, just try and think of it like this. Okay, so just take the amount of miles, or how many light years, how old the universe is, multiply that together, and you got your answer. So in this case, if you wanted to figure out how big the universe was at maybe as soon on an average distance, so you would take the speed of light. Well, really, 1 light year. So you would take how many light years there are. So the 1 light year, again, 5.88 trillion miles. and you would take that, multiply that by 180 billion light years, because that's the age of it, and then you would figure out what your distance is, and that's how many miles, or essentially kilometers, you would have in diameter, and then you could pretty much figure out the circumference, the mass of the universe, and try and fill in the space in like a giant sphere of what the universe looks like. But it's kind of debatable what the shape of the universe really is. Some people say it's a sphere because they say that the universe is expanding in like all possible directions. There's no one side rushing faster than the other. It's like the same speed on all sides. But that's just to kind of get you thinking, though. Essentially, you want to figure out, you take 1 light year, how old the universe is measured in light years, and you just multiply that together, and there you go.